So the controversy over the shooting of unarmed teenager Michael Brown, that continues to grow, with police saying that he was a suspect in a strong-arm robbery just before he was killed by police. And what you're looking at right here is video of the alleged robbery that was just released today. But police are saying that the officer who shot Brown did not know that he was a robbery suspect at the time. Of course, Brown's death has sparked days of violent protests in Missouri. Let's start off with Fox's Mike Tobin from Ferguson.
The shooting death of unarmed teen Michael Brown touched off days of violent protests in Ferguson, Missouri. And now police are telling their side of the story. Officials revealing the name of the officer who fired the fatal shot, Darren Wilson, a 6-year veteran with no disciplinary problems. It's not clear why Wilson initially stopped Brown, but police say the teenager stole cigars from a nearby convenience store before being confronted by Wilson, who was working on a different case and was not aware Brown was a suspect when the shooting happened.
There were two separate officers. This robbery does not relate to the initial contact between the officer and Michael Brown.
But some community members say they're not buying it.
This kid was getting ready to go to school. Why in the world would he want to go out and steal the day before he go to school? 2 days before he go to school. It don't add up.
Now the focus turns back to safety. The State Highway Patrol firmly in command here in Ferguson. They say the violence of the past week has largely subsided. Law enforcement now reaching out to a traumatized community.
And I think yesterday we handled it just right. We shook hands and we hugged and we had a great time. And we're going to talk about last night and move forward today.
An attorney for Brown's family says the teenager was not involved in a robbery. They're accusing the Ferguson police of, quote, character assassination. In Ferguson, Missouri, Mike Tobin, Fox News.
Former Boston Police Superintendent-in-Chief Dan Linsky is at our Beacon Hill studio to talk about all of this. Chief, thank you so much for joining us. Let's look at these still pictures right now, I think, because sometimes still pictures tell the story even more clear. So this right here apparently is this young man who was shot and killed by police, and that's the store owner. What do you see in these?
Yeah, it looks like there's a violent confrontation. It looks like a large individual is taking advantage of an older individual who's trying to intervene, and it looks like there was some violence there.
All right, now let's look at the surveillance video again. We just saw it, but let's just remind people, this is the new surveillance video that was released today, and police saying that Michael Brown and his friend, they were suspected of stealing a box of cigars, which we just heard, worth just under $50, and then Brown went out, was shot and killed by police and later that night. So then police come out and say, geez, we didn't know that he was involved in this robbery. So that statement doesn't really correspond with the video that we're seeing. Take us through it here, Chief.
Well, it depends on what time, you know, he encountered the officer and the fatal encounter occurred. It might be that they were processing the scene, they hadn't had a chance to recover the video, and they weren't aware exactly who they were looking for.
So then why shoot an unarmed teenager?
Well, we don't know what happened in that car, and that's up to the investigating agencies and the officials responsible for prosecution there. That's the question. What happened in the car? Was it, as the officer said, where this individual was stopped by the officer and a struggle ensued where the officer's gun was grabbed? If that's the case, and you're grabbing an officer's gun, that certainly could justify the use of deadly force.
And that's... Go ahead.
If it's another way, if it says other witnesses say, and the officer used his weapon without being assaulted, well, then that's clearly an unnecessary use of force, and that's something that would be prosecuted both civilly and criminally. But we have to wait for the officials there to look at the forensic evidence, the testimonial evidence, to gather everything from not just the media sources, but from actual eyewitnesses who come forward and bring their information to the police and the district attorneys who are prosecuting this case and investigating the case.
Why did they take so long to release this video? I mean, every single night we're having these violent protests. People are out there looting. Obviously, that video might have I can't say obviously. Let me retract that and say maybe that would have changed what had happened night after night. Why do it now?
Well, sometimes you have to protect evidence of cases so that you don't taint witnesses. So, for example, the type of clothing he might have been wearing at the time. If you have an eyewitness who says they saw the whole thing, you have to describe Brown wearing different clothing. You wouldn't want to put out a video that would show them what he was wearing beforehand if the eyewitness didn't factually observe it. Oftentimes, people tell us they were at a scene of a crime, and we find out that they got there after the fact and heard things second and third hand.
See, now that is such a fascinating answer, because I think a lot of us are just saying, you know, what are you holding on to that for? But we don't know the police side of it, and that is very critical, could be very critical to an investigation. So police released the identity of the officer today.
Yes.
Why did they wait so long to do that?
Well, I think they had concerns for the officer's safety. You know, we've had events in our city where officers were involved in fatal encounters, where victims' friends and family have threatened the officers and, in fact, gone to officers' homes with weapons. Early on in my police career, where fortunately they picked the wrong officer's home with a similar name, but you know, emotions are high, and if it's as the officer says, and this young man reached in the car and tried to take his weapon, the officer's a victim in this case. We don't know what happened. We have to let the facts and the evidence be sorted out and be presented to the individuals responsible for prosecuting the case and conducting the investigation. But the officer could, in fact, be a victim here. So I think officer safety concerns were clearly legitimate. Something as simple as when we cleared the Occupy movement off of the Greenway, my family's information, my mother's address, phone number, all my personal information, my children's information, and a threat to blow up me and my children was put on the internet and requesting people to respond and harass us. So it's a real threat. I think, though, credit to the authorities for, you know, obviously establishing a safety plan for that officer and being able to release that information. That way it shows the transparency that they're willing to open up the investigation. This is an officer, from what I understand, 6 years on the force, no discipline, no other issues. That's significant. If you had an officer who had a history of excessive force, a history of abusing people, that would be significant as well in helping people shape their opinions as this story plays out.
Former Boston Police Superintendent-in-Chief Dan Linsky at our Beacon Hill studio. Thank you so much. We appreciate your expertise.
Thank you for having me, Maria.
All right, thank you. Mike, to you.